And today we got one of my favorite movies, my favorite Blaxploitation movies of all time, and that is Bucktown. Now, this movie stars Blaxploitation royalty. I mean, you got the king himself of Blaxploitation, Mr. Fred Williamson, and you got the queen of Blaxploitation, Pam Grier. But before we get into that, let me tell you a little bit about it. So, Bucktown came out in 1975. It was on American International Pictures, and it was directed by Arthur Marks, who did several really cool Blaxploitation films. He directed JD's Revenge, Detroit 9000, Monkey Hustle, and Friday Foster, which also had Pam Grier in it. So, dude has an extensive Blaxploitation resume. So that was cool. And what this one is really about is Fred Williamson plays a guy named Duke Johnson who comes to this country town to bury his brother. And as he does, he finds out that his brother was murdered by corrupt cops. So he goes at the cops, has a little trouble. Then he calls in his boys for help. And his boys get rid of the cops, but then they take over the town. And as a result, they become even worse than the corrupt cops were. So that's kind of like the movie in a nutshell. But like I said, Bucktown is one of my favorite Blaxploitation films. I watch it every so often. And again, who do you have in it? Like I said, Fred Williamson, the king of Blaxploitation. Now, I mentioned a few episodes why I call him the king of Blaxploitation, but in case you missed it, I know some people may say, well, he did a lot of movies, but didn't have any like really quintessential Blaxploitation characters other than Tommy Gibbs from Black Caesar and Hell Up in Harlem. True, but when you think about the movies he's done, the range, he did westerns, and then more importantly, he opened his own production company, Po' Boy Productions, and produced some Blaxploitation films himself. I would argue that Fred Williamson is like the one guy who tried to keep Blaxploitation alive all the way through the 80s, because with his Black Cobra series, he kind of followed that Blaxploitation trope. But one of the other things about it is, we often talk about how some people say Blaxploitation was a negative time and it's a negative term and things like that. But one of the things I've always heard Fred Williamson say, he stuck to it, is he was like, my checks cash, the people who worked for me, their checks cash. So who was being exploited? And I love that attitude. One other thing about Fred Williamson, I was watching an interview on another platform recently, and he said something about he had three conditions in all of his contracts. One was he always gets the girl if he wants her. One was he never loses a fight. And doggone it, for the life of me, I forget the third one, but I just thought that was hilarious that he said he always put that in his contract. So that's the king of Blaxploitation, Fred Williamson. So he plays Duke Johnson in this movie. Then we have undisputably the queen of Blaxploitation, Pam Grier, which I mean, I would hope no one will argue that there's any female more important to the genre than Pam Grier. But she plays Aretha, who is, I'm guessing she was the girlfriend of Duke's brother who passed, whose name was Ben Johnson, but then later on, she kind of takes a liking to Duke and they hook up. Who else did you have in this movie? Now, even though you had Black royalty with Fred Williamson and Pam Grier, the person who really, to me, put this movie over the top and why I love this movie so much is this guy right here, Dalmas Rasulullah, or Rasulullah, however you pronounce it. But he plays Duke Johnson's boy Roy, who Duke calls in for the muscle for the help. But Dalmas, man, in this movie, he has some timeless dialogue. I'm gonna play a clip a little bit later, and I just love him in this movie, man. This is my dude, man. So he really, to me, took Bucktown over the top and made it one of my favorite movies. You have, as part of Roy's crew, when Roy brought his crew into town, you have Tony King, who also, and I mean, I love Tony King as an actor. And side note for him, his name is Malik Farrakhan. Now he is, I don't know if he still is, but he changed his name to Malik Farrakhan. And at one point, he may still be. He was the head of security for a rap group or hip hop group, Public Enemy. Go figure. But anyway, this dude always plays like villains in movies. I won't say always, but the two movies that he really stands out to me in that he's played villains. I really hated this character. Love Tony King, but hated the character. And that is the character he plays in this movie, TJ. And then some of you all may remember him as Satin from Sparkle, the way he treated Lynette McKee as sister in Sparkle. And we'll probably hit Sparkle as one of our movies a little bit later in the future. But yeah, man. So Tony King as TJ, kind of didn't like the guy. Um, Now, those were the main four characters and top bill on the poster in and of itself. If you can see right there, Fred Williamson, Pam Grier, Damas Rasulullah, and Tony King. But who else you had in this movie was Bernie Hamilton and Tierra Turner. They played. Now, it never kind of established a relationship between the three of these. Like, so Bernie Hamilton played a dude named Harley, excuse me, Harley. Tierra Turner played this little hustler named Stevie, and Pam Grier, of course, with Aretha. And they were kind of like the staples or locals of the Bucktown, were friends with Duke or Ben Johnson, Duke's brother. But it never talked about the relationship between the three of these. Like, I don't know if Stevie was her brother or Harley was. I mean, they were just close friends, but never described the true relationship. But anyway, you may remember Bernie Hamilton as Captain Dobie from Starsky and Hutch back in the 70s. And then Tierra Turner, he was actually in, I think it was Friday Foster with Pam Grier as well. Friday Foster or Sheba Baby. He was in another movie with Pam Grier. So they are, play an important part. And then this guy, Apollo Creed, Carl Weathers plays one of Roy's crew named Hambo. Pretty funny. And then lastly, who we got in this movie is this guy, Art Lund. Now, he plays, what's his character's name? His character is Chief Patterson in this movie. And he's one of the cops that ultimately Duke and crew get rid of. But the interesting thing about Art Lund is he also played a nemesis or a foil to a Fred Williamson character in the aforementioned Black Caesar. He was Captain Jack McKinney, who had history with Tommy Gibbs. So interesting that he plays a villain again against Fred Williamson in Bucktown. All right. So the movie in and of itself, man, like I said, great movie. Give you a quick rundown overview. So like I said, Duke comes into town for his brother's funeral, and you kind of knew Bucktown was corrupt when Williamson comes into town or Duke Johnson comes into town on a train, and the first thing he sees getting off the train is this brother getting beat up by police. So right then and there, you kind of know this is a town that, all right, it probably ain't looking too good for us. He asks a cab to take him to this club. The club's closed, so he gets to this hotel. And upon getting to the hotel, that's when he meets little Stevie. Stevie's like this little hustler, man. He's like, whatever you need, I can get it for you. So Tier did a great job in that role, but it's just a little funny. So now, when he checks into the hotel, this clerk, a sister, unfortunately, calls the sheriff, so calls Art on there, and tells him that, hey, this guy just got into town, last name Johnson, Duke Johnson. So then the sheriff's on alert. Now, Fred Williamson, as Duke Johnson, goes to the funeral to pay respects to his brother. And then that's where he meets Harley and Tierra, along with, well, not Tierra, Stevie. He sees Stevie and then with Harley and Aretha. So he meets them. And, Harley and Stevie are kind of all excited to meet Duke when they find out, who he is. But Aretha's she goes off on him because I guess Ben had talked about him, but he never came into town. So she kind of goes off on him. Now, Duke's come to pay his respects. He's ready to get out of there. He wants to get Ben's stuff, like anything Ben has, and get out of there. But unfortunately, they have this condition that he has to stay around for 60 days. And so during that time, Ben owned the club. That's really why he was killed, because he didn't pay off the dirty cops. So during this time, Harley and Stevie convince Duke to reopen the club. Opens the club. Club is popping. So then the dirty cops are back at it. They try to pull the shakedown on Duke. He ain't having it. He kicks some butt. And one of the funny scenes was when they try to come shake him down. How one of the cops treats him. So let me show you this one real quick. It's kind of funny.
All right, fellas, get out.
You want me to tell him, Clete?
No, I'll tell him, bro.
Fact is, I'm gonna tell him real friendly. I'm even gonna call him by his first name. Nigga! You wanna do business in Bucktown, you gotta pay for the privilege.
I'm gonna call him by his first name. Now, the funny thing about that scene is, I don't know if you could catch it when the cop calls him nigga. It, you could see Fred Williamson biting his lip. So I don't know if like that was written into the script or if he like thought it was funny because you could tell he was holding back the laugh, and I don't know if that was written into the script that Duke's so cool that he holds back a laugh as the cop verbally assaults him, or if Fred Williamson just thought it was funny. But I always catch that when I watch that particular one. Okay. So now these cops try to shake him down. He ain't having it. He beats the cops down. So at that point, that's when Aretha, Pam Grier, takes a liking to him. Like, okay, he about it. So now they start, kicking it, hook up. And at one point, they're at Duke's crib and the cops shoot his crib up. So they like shoot his crib up, trying to take him out and tell him, screaming at him, get out of town. So now at that point, that's when Duke calls up his man Roy and Dallas Rasulullah, okay, or Rasulullah. So he calls Duke and he tells Duke, bring muscle. So Duke comes in, brings his crew, and right off the bat, you could tell like his crew. It was three of them that came in. It was TJ, which was Tony King. Right off the bat, you could tell TJ ain't right. And what I mean by that is like he's like looking at Aretha kind of provocatively, like he just looks like he's scheming from the get go. And Hambone, that's who Carl Weathers played. It was a character in Duke's crew named Hambone. That was Carl Weathers, and there was another guy named Josh. I don't even remember who the actor was who played him. But once the crew comes to town, they dole out vigilante justice. They pretty much take out the cops. If they don't run them out of town, they kill several of them, run some out of town. And you would think that's it, right? Yeah, call my boys in. They handled it for me. Everything's cool. And my boys leave, or Duke's boys leave, and it's all good. But no, Roy and crew see what a good thing the dirty cops had going on, shaking people down. So they decide, hey, we gonna stay around here for a while. So they wind up becoming the police. Now, during this, while they're shaking people down, there's an incident where Harley gets drunk in the club and they beat him down. So that's kind of now they're messing with Duke's people. So that's big deal. And then TJ, like I said, he ain't right. He tries to assault Aretha. So let's take a look at that scene real quick.
First, I'm gonna break your arms. And I'm gonna break your legs. I'm gonna start on your face.
So there you have it. Duke beats TJ down. And one of the things, again, like I said, I watch Bucktown frequently, several times. But one of the things that always kind of seems out of character to me is when several episodes back when we did the Hitman episode with from the movie Hitman with Bernie Casey, and I said I wasn't used to Pam Grier being a villain. I'm also not used to Pam Grier being, kind of defenseless. Like when you see TJ trying to assault her and she's helpless, like, I'm used to Pam Grier kicking butt. So, but she had to do what she had to do for this one because Fred Williamson comes in and saves her, or Duke comes in and saves her. But, I was looking at her and I was like, Pam Grier typically would be then jumped up and waxed this fool. Nevertheless, all right. So with that, after that happens, now Duke is really mad. So him and Roy get into it like, hey, Roy, why you sending your people, your crew after my people and all this and that? So they get into it. Duke's like, Roy, you got to leave town. Roy's like, I ain't going nowhere. I got a good thing going here. So get out the way. Well, what happens is Duke doles out justice, killing off Roy's entire crew, everyone except for Roy. And basically, the climax is in the final battle, Roy and Duke agree to fight it out with the loser leaving town. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but you can probably guess. All right. So that is Bucktown. And like I said, it's one of my favorite movies. So I'm going to strongly, highly encourage you to go check it out. Now, although our movie for this week isn't the Bucktown soundtrack, I just had to share, like Johnny Pate did the soundtrack and the theme song. I'm gonna play a little snippet of it. Luther Rab, who was later in the group War, sings on this, and man, this cut is so funky. So I had to share this one with you.
She's always on my mind. Things are getting better in Bucktown. I see the people laying their money down. Things are getting better in Bucktown. I think I'm gonna hang around. Things are getting better in Bucktown. I see the people laying their money down.
That is funky. All right. So now, before we shift, I wanted to show you one last thing because I remember I said Thelma's Rasulallah's Roy was the guy who really set this movie off and how he had some timeless dialogue. Here is a scene, and you may have caught, like, a couple of rappers have sampled some of this dialogue. So when you listen to it and you see it, so tell me if you can think of a song that used this. So here we go.
Do you think anybody in this town is any different? They don't give a damn who gets killed, just so long as the dice keep rolling, the hoes keep hoeing, and the money keeps flowing. It all revolves around the big G, baby, the big green. Everybody everywhere is scratching for what they can get. I'm just scratching a little harder.
I love it, man. That is classic. Everybody's the big G. It's all about the big G, baby, the big green. But Big L, rest in peace, God bless the dead. From Harlem, back in his album, I think it was 1995, Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous. On that actual title cut, he sampled the part about all they care about is the dice keep rolling, the hoes keep hoeing, and the money keeps flowing. So, and like I said, I think some others have sampled that as well. So that's what we got this week for the movie Bucktown. Check it out.